Something a little bit different today. We're actually on the bank, we're not in the studio. I think it's time to roll the intro. So this 2 Minute Tuesday is brought to you partly by Bill Cottam. Now, I had a good old chat with Bill at the Big One show, and he gave me 6 tips for catching very big fish. Bill's ability to catch really, really large carp is legendary. In fact, the guy is a monster carp catching machine. Here's just a few of them. Let's face it, we all love to catch carp, but now and again we all want to catch a larger carp. So Bill gave me 6 of his own top tips of what he does to catch bigger fish than everyone else. So let's go and put 2 minutes on the clock. Number 1. So his first number 1 tip was to fish waters that actually have big fish. Now, I know that sounds really obvious. In fact, when he said it to me, I kind of looked at him and went, really? So when Bill goes to the continent, if he's fishing for really, really large carp, what he does is he singles out the waters that he knows are going to produce big fish. And he also then starts to keep a track of those waters where he checks out to see where the big fish have turned up. And funny enough, a lot of the big fish anglers out there will always kind of keep an ear to the ground and try and find out which swims produce the big fish, because they can tend to be a little bit territorial, and those particular swims always seem to produce those type of fish. Point 2. Bill reckons that by sticking to a boilie only approach, i.e. scrapping particles and pellets and crumb and all the other bits and pieces that we utilise for carping, he feels that if we stick just to a boilie only approach, it does tend to single out the bigger fish. Also, using a very high quality bait in that is a big key. Point 3. Bill thinks that since he started using trigger, his catch rates of bigger fish has gone through the roof. Certain baits become very big fish selective on any given water. So for him, trigger is the bait to use. One of Bill's favourites is trigger with pineapple and embutyric, or in the trade as we know it, pine and butt. Bill feels that this has accounted for more fish than any other bait that he's ever used. He really has so much confidence in that bait. It's very, very big fish selective, according to Bill. Bill's tip number 4 comes in the guise of hook lengths. Now, the average hook length that most anglers tend to use is anywhere between 4 and maybe 10 inches long. After catching a number of big fish, Bill realised the physiology and anatomy of the bigger fish is so vast that using shorter hook lengths may be counterproductive to him. So he started to increase his hook lengths to about 14 inches. So most people are also using a hook length material that is different to what Bill uses. Most of them are using the coated braids, or they're using some sort of boom section with braid at the very end of it. What Bill likes to do is use straight through 14 inches of braid, his favourite being obviously silkworm from Christon. Now, Bill has openly admitted that he reckons by using such a long hook length, it has cost him an awful lot of smaller fish, but he's not there to catch smaller fish. He feels that whilst he's losing out on lots of action, by using the longer hook length, he feels that it's given him more opportunity of a hookup of bigger fish. Tip number 5, don't fish where there's loads of fish. Yeah, another one of those that made me kind of look at Bill twice, but when you think about it, it makes an awful lot of sense. I mean, the anecdotal evidence is there. Big fish tend to be loners. They don't really follow the crowds. They are quite happy to mooch around on their own, away from the hot swims where there's lots of action. You know, you take any given lake, there'll always be the zones that get you loads of bites and everybody rushes to get them. And it's always the guy fishing at the other end of the pit in the wrong spot. You know, they do things differently. And so behaving differently yourself, avoiding the areas where there's lots of fish action or you can see lots of fish, maybe that's a place to go and try and winkle out one of the bigger fish. It certainly worked for Bill. Bill tries to keep away from the masses, and he's quite happy to go away from a water with only maybe 1 or 2 fish for a week or two's fishing, but they're going to be huge. Tip number 6. Courage of your convictions. It's such an important thing. If we're being honest, we're defining big fish probably in the 60 to 80 pound bracket. I mean, that's what the modern day carping world would dictate as a big fish is. And let's face it, most of our fishing to do that kind of fish would be abroad. So we're going to go away for a week's fishing or 2 weeks fishing, and we're going to have to try and sit it out and wait it out to maybe winkle out one of these gigantic fish that swim in these lakes. One of the problems is when other people are catching and you're blanking, you can begin to second guess yourself and doubt yourself, and that's where you've got to stop. Because I'm fishing so long, when I go fishing, I know that the tackle I'm using is going to be up to the job in hand. I also know that the rigs that I'm using are going to catch me a fish if they're feeding. I've no issues with my rig or my tackle. My bait is the best bait I can use on the market. I know that if the carp are feeding, it's going to be something that they'll want to feed on. I've eliminated all my doubts on this end. My doubts are now going to be out in the water. Am I in the right spot? And that's where you have to have the courage of your convictions. You've got to find a spot in your swim that you think is going to most likely produce a bite for you. And then you need to bait up accordingly to what you think is going to be the required baiting. And this is where it gets a little bit fuzzy. And literally you just got to sit on your hands and wait. Big carp fishing is not an exact science, but you know, one of those things that if you start chopping and changing, they're not going to come your way. You need to sit on your hands. Bill is quite happy to sit there for 2 weeks and blank, knowing that at the very last minute he could still winkle out one of the monsters, as so often has been the case. So that's 2 Minute Tuesday. I can't take really much credit for this video because it's all Bill's stuff. I'm just relaying it to you. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and don't forget to give it a bit of a like and a share, and we'll see you on another Tuesday.